Go district, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text. That trash offer's the best. You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense.
Dan, we are back. We are back. It's rolling in week 5 now, brother.
Oh man. Yes. Ready for it for sure.
Look, tonight we've got a big show. We've got a couple of serious guests. We might even have a little surprise appearance, little guest appearance from one of our more regular guests that he felt like shooting the shit, like we like to say, but he also has a new baby in the house. So it could go either way right now. So you know what? We're going to get into it. Tonight we're talking players that we've missed on coming into the season. You know, people like to talk about guys you hit on, guys you missed on, but what do you do with them? So this week we're going to talk about players that we missed on, that our guests missed on coming into the season. We've got all high-stakes players on the site tonight, or on the show tonight. FFPC players, guys that play in the big money, and we're anxious to hear what they have to say about these guys. As usual, we're going to talk waiver wire, trades. But first, Dan, I was going to brag about my internet, but, as usual, we're back to lagging and buffering. And no matter what I do, man, it just seems like I can't win. The Wi-Fi, just like the internet, is undefeated right now.
All right. Yeah. So you'll get to have that conversation with your wife about the streaming later. I for one, would like to have a window on that, but yeah. Hey, and I'm in a brand new office. I mean, it's so new that my daughter's not even finished moving out of her room yet. We still have Tweety Bird back up in the corner. I mean, we're talking the whole business here. But yeah, hopefully before long, this will transform into my real office. And in celebration of such, we got the Crowler, not just the regular can, but the 32-ounce can Crowler. And I went out and you got to have a koozie for your Crowler. So I got the jumbo size koozies too. So nice. Yeah, we're ready to roll now. I mean, this is definitely a podcasting beer here.
I was going to say your background is giving me flashbacks of Kevin Cotillo in a couple of years ago on the Podathon.
Right.
All right. So like we said, look, you guys know, we bring you guys goodness every week. We bring in the heavy hitters. This week's a little special because, like I said, actually right before we start recording, what this man has brought to Fantasyland with a couple of his buddies, of his partners, is like one of those things where once you hear about it, you're like, why the fuck didn't I think about that? So then we'll bring in the first guy. I'll let you kind of intro the second guy who's kind of lounging there. I can't wait till Fantasyland gets to check out that setup. But first, we got to go to our boy Lance, to our boy Nelson. You may have heard whispers of something called the Dynasty Depot, but we're gonna bring this man in and we're gonna let him tell you about it. But Nelson, welcome to the Goat District, brother.
Thank you very much, boys. I really appreciate the invitation. I appreciate us talking about doing some business together, and lots of love to you guys and everything you guys do. You guys are wonderful.
For sure, man. This is a great new partnership. Dan and I, we only partner with, I guess, companies, opportunities, ideas, websites for Fantasyland that we believe in. And your product is definitely, like we said, something that is, I think, filling a void that maybe Fantasyland didn't even know was there. It's adding a different dimension to Dynasty, which is amazing. But you know what? I'm going to pass it to you. Tell Fantasyland where they can find the Dynasty Depot, what it's about, and anything else you want to share.
Well, the Dynasty Depot was created for one reason, and one reason only. Sitting around drinking wine, trying to figure out what we can do in the off season. Dynasty Depot is one word. It's action. We try to figure out and find something where we could create action in the off season, because we all know when the season ends, Dynasty, we're looking forward to drafting and making trades and improving our teams. but there just seems to be, there was a wasteland there and some missed opportunities where people want to unload their teams. Well, you can't unless you orphan them. People want to buy teams. You know, there's things that can happen there with action. So what we did was created Dynasty Depot, which is an auction website for bidding on, buying, and selling dynasty team, FFPC dynasty teams is where we're at right now. So basically what we got going is our membership, which will begin signups on November 1st. You're going to need to be a member. We want serious players, and FFPC and the high stakes people are serious players, and we understand that, but we don't want any compromising of the site. You're going to have to be a member. Auctions will begin January 4th. So what that's going to entail is if you have a team and you pay for your 2021 season, you are entitled to put that team up for auction. As I said, they'll begin on January 4th. The auctions are pretty cool, man. They're going to run 24 hours, 72 hours, in 5 days. So you got a 1, 3, and 5 day option. Now it runs just really similar to the eBay people. You'll put your team up. You will set a reserve. You'll set a buy it now. You'll set an auction time, and there you go. It's up for sale. Our membership options, which are really cool, but probably the coolest thing. You guys ever buy Orphan teams on FFPC?
I was just going to say, Dan, I was going to pass to Dan just because he actually introduced me to the idea of the value change of Dynasty, because I don't even think people who play fantasy understand how the values of these rosters change, especially in an environment like the FFPC where Dynasty leagues they stay forever, but they don't open up on a daily basis, right?
Correct.
So Dan, I'll pass it to you. You must be excited about a product like this.
Yeah, for sure. Because, this gives us a chance to, get in there and, I don't know exactly how, Nelson's going to have the teams displayed or anything like that. But, I'm assuming you'll definitely be able to see the full roster and draft picks and everything of a team that's up for sale. Nelson, will you have any information on the rest of the league, or is that?
So here's how it's going to work to answer a couple of your questions. So, okay. You'll be able to filter by dollar denominations and league types: standard, best ball, super flex, best ball. Okay. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep. Okay. You're doing great.
Filter there. The coolest thing, and I was going to ask you a question, Danny. You bought Orphan teams before, correct? Correct.
Yes.
Okay. What is the biggest pain in the ass about getting an Orphan team? Do you know what that is?
Well, to me, it's been pretty simple, but one of the things is you just don't know exactly what kind of a league you're walking into, and so just having some information.
That's true. Wasn't the exact answer I was hoping you would spit out, but it's perfect, man. So to me, the problem with that is you have to click on the FFPC Orphan page 10,000 times a day and hope that the right team was posted at the right time. Correct?
Correct. Yeah. Some of those teams do disappear pretty fast.
Right.
You kind of bookmark it and you say, you know what, I'm kind of interested in this. I'm going to go back to it, and it's gone.
Right. So what we've developed is when you are a mid-tier, an all-pro member of ours, and we're giving away, I'll give it to you later, we're giving this away for $59 the first year because we want players, we want FFPC people to be happy. One of the features in their $59 packages, every time a new team posts, it will land on a notification on your phone. You'll look at the team on your phone, click it if you want to bid on it. So you don't have to go fishing back. Because as we all know, the good teams go, listen, I bought this year, I have over 100 dynasty teams. My best team was a 1250 team that I bought. I happened to click on at the right time. It had 101 and a bunch of other things on it. And, it's going to pay this year. It's going to pay. And that was a problem. That was one of the features we had to come up with to make sure the players are able to see the teams.
Right.
And I think it's a really cool feature that we ended up developing, and it's fantastic.
Guys, I want to bring someone else into this conversation. I actually, this is purely my mistake. Anytime there's a mistake on this show, it's 100% my fault. Dan is like as perfect as it gets. But no,
there's another mistake.
Yeah, in all seriousness, I did want to bring our other guest on because he does play on the site. I don't know if he does Orphans. Dan, you might be able to answer that, but I believe even if he does or doesn't, I know he's got an opinion on this because he was pretty excited about the idea. So why don't we bring in our boy at Sports Betting Man, Lance? Welcome to the Goat District, brother. We appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Hey,
Pleasure to be here.
Lance is actually in the Pros versus Joes league that Dan and I were invited to, the Dynasty League on the FFPC. He's
we're all in that league together, man.
He's an owner on there. Nelson is an owner on there. So all four of us.
Lance is actually on the Hardos.
Yeah.
Oh, is he in Hardos? Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm getting him mixed up. See, Dan's got me in all these high stakes leagues, and I'm just like, but okay. So point is, both of these guys are in high stakes leagues with us. But Lance, do you do Orphan? Do you buy Orphan teams in Dynasty on the FFPC?
Yeah, I think I bought like 2 750s and a 500 2 years ago, and then this year I think I bought another either a 750 or 500 also. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on what you've heard so far from Nelson?
I had the same question as Dan. Like I want to see if there's a super team, but that's just knowing you got future picks, and I mean you deal with your team the way you deal with your team. But yeah, that's very cool to get first come.
Yeah, obviously, Lance, there's no way to open up the leagues and see what you're bidding on. It basically falls down to the talent you feel you have in yourself and your skill to develop that team, correct?
Yeah.
So
it's a long process.
It's a process. So let me tell you something else, which maybe you heard about, maybe you didn't. This game within a game that we developed here, which I think is probably the coolest feature about Dynasty Depot. So let's just use for an example, you buy a $77 team, you bid on it for $5 and win it. Okay, $77 Dynasty team. You're going to hit what's called the Dynasty Depot leaderboard. Let's say, just for hell's sake, it's best ball. So you buy a $77 team for $5, best ball. You will be in the Dynasty Depot best ball leaderboard. What you do with that team from February when you buy it to the beginning of the season, your points will accumulate and transfer from FFPC to the Dynasty Depot leaderboard, meaning every week, you'll accumulate your points against every other best ball team that was purchased on Dynasty Depot, whether it being a $77 or a $2,500 or a $5,000. It carries no more weight. It's what you do to develop and what you do with the team. So again, you bought a $77 team, you bid $5, nobody wanted on it, you spun it around, and it hits the leaderboard. Well, first place in our leaderboard, which you're not paying for, I'm paying for, is an FFPC main event seat. So it's technically a satellite. You for $5 could win you $500,000, right?
Nice.
There is. I think second place we developed. I think second place is a free $500 Dynasty team, and so on down. But we're going to pay 10 places in each of the 4 categories out of our own pockets for every team that was purchased on Dynasty Depot. So if you have skill and you do some smart shopping on the site, it could lead to some good things.
It's basically like a stock market for rosters.
That's what it is.
Love it.
Exactly what it is.
Nice.
That's awesome, man. And you guys just recently locked up that partnership with our friends over at the FFPC and our boy Alex. So congrats on that, man.
We did. We have a couple of key partnerships. Obviously, them being our main one. We're really excited. I mean, you ever hear of the D Hotel out in Las Vegas?
Yeah.
Okay. The D Hotel is opening the largest sports book in the world at Circa, their new casino, opening October 28th. And somehow they have graced me as our site sponsor and are also going to be part of our business.
Very nice. Congrats.
So it's really exciting. I got to feel like, we have a great idea, where this thing goes from here. I have no idea. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm very excited to be doing stuff with you guys. And I think it's a natural partnership. But I think we're onto something pretty cool here.
Yeah, and like I told you when we initially talked, like we're excited to be part of it and to work in partnership, but to also be along for the ride and like you said, see where this thing goes, because I think it's definitely a unique offer, and it's definitely something that like I said, it's kind of that void, that it's that thing that you didn't even realize you were missing. That's the way I see it.
It is. It's weird how it all came about and how it all developed, but it makes sense if you really think about it. It makes sense. So, our first step is starting to get members on the board. We're going to be doing some pretty heavy advertising on Sirius XM radio. Somehow my ugly voice and ugly face are going to be doing some commercials here and trying to figure out, how to get pretty somehow.
I think Lance can give you some tips. He looks like he's already over there at XM Radio with that stuff.
No doubt.
I might hire Lance to do the commercials. He looks like more dad to be doing that stuff than me, man. But we're getting ready to start taking memberships. Our site's going to open November 1st. So anybody that goes to dynastydepot.com, you pop your email in, you'll be getting an email with a promo code for an FFPC 40% off and this crazy stuff and these cool Dynasty Depot t-shirts. And, we're looking to give away the house to get members. We're not worrying about the profit is not important to us right now. Getting the name out and making sure we have the brand right. Yep. Making sure we do things right, making sure the integrity of the site's right. We want everything right. This year, that's what it's all about. We want people to have fun, and we think we can make this into a major brand in the industry.
No, I think you're definitely it's definitely onto something. It's definitely there. It's definitely on the cusp of blowing up, and we're proud to be part of that and to be in partnership with you guys. So again, guys, we appreciate you coming on. Lance, why don't we go to you for a bit? Just you obviously spoke a bit about your experience. Let Fantasyland know your background in fantasy and specifically in the high stakes realms.
I started with just local leagues. I think it was baseball first, like in the probably early 90s. And but I got it. I didn't know about the World Championships of Fantasy Football the first year, but just internet searching, I found it 2002, I think, and got in. Once I found it existed, I was like, dude, we're going. So we used to have uncles and friends and brothers, and we'd make a big deal out of it. But yeah, I've been playing ever since. I haven't stopped. That's every year. But I've expanded into Dynasty. I think when he was a rookie, when RG3 was a rookie, that was my first year in Dynasty. And I think that's my favorite, by far, because you can have all the injuries happen. You can have all you were a year too early happen, and you still get a chance to keep that roster for the next year and the next year. And it's just, in the long run, if you're good, you're going to probably do better in Dynasty than anything else.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I got to say, just in a way of introducing Lance a little bit more, if you go to the Vegas live event, Lance is definitely he's one of the big characters there. And what I love about him is he's not only one of the big characters there, but he's one of the heavy hitters. I mean, if you're in a league with Lance, you got some serious stiff competition. So you gotta watch out. You gotta be on point. We saw that in our Hardos League, the Dynasty League that we drafted this summer. And, Lance does not pull punches, man. When he goes out and he drafts, he's taking his guys, and he will make sure he gets his guys. And, and he's putting together a really nice team there. Like, he took Clyde Edwards-Helaire with a 4th overall pick. And this was, I believe, before Damian Williams had even opted out. So, as I recall, and, and then he went Mahomes in the 2nd round. He went, who did he go? He went CeeDee Lamb in the 3rd round, Kareem Hunt in the 4th round. This guy's looking like he's got his, he's got his Biff Sports Almanac going all the time. So you got to watch out for Lance, man. The guy is a real competitor.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, that's definitely a competitive league. I mean, both of the leagues that we're in with you guys are super competitive right now. Dan, remind me, I think we're 3-1 in the Hardos and 2-2 in the Pros versus Joes. Yep. Now, if I go to each of you, we ask our guests every week, just general approach in fantasy, like, whether it's the way you build your roster, whether you're competing now versus later. Like, I'll go to you first, Lance. What's your general approach when you're approaching your rosters or fantasy or getting into a league? Dan kind of, I guess, said it, but anything to add to your aggression?
Well, when you buy orphans, it's mostly you want to make sure you have a first round pick or at least something you could sell for a first. But no, I mean, I tried one of my first dynasties was an arena league, private league, and I went old trying to win now, and that backfired so bad it took like 4 years to even get competitive. So that was a hard lesson, and I won't do that anymore. But yeah, I try to stay youngish, and like in the hard way, I was trying to just say, okay, I'm going to draft a bunch of guys that are young in age, and so either way, they'll be good draft chips for trading later because they're still young. You give them that benefit of the doubt that they're going to get better, so they always have a built-in like leverage. So I kind of try to lean younger if they're, even in the near ballpark. But that's about it.
Lance, we have a special guest. He's a returning guest. I mean, anyone who listens to this show knows this man. So I'll just welcome him quickly back to the GOAT District, and then I want to get your take on your approach to fantasy. Jordan McNamara, welcome back to the GOAT District, brother. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, you texted me earlier today and were like, "Hey, you wanna come on?" And I was like, "Yeah, you talking like tonight?"
I'm in like 2 weeks, but we're good, man.
I'm like, yeah, like that's, but yeah. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, guys. Nice meeting you guys.
Yeah, Dan and I have like a handful of honorable guests that can it's like an open invitation, and you're definitely one of them. So we appreciate you coming on tonight. Jordan just had a new addition to the family, so congrats on that, brother.
Thanks. I was a little late. She wanted to eat a little bit more than we had fed her, so I was running a few minutes late. But thanks for having me on.
Yeah, appetite. That's a good thing. So,
Yes,
so Nelson, I'm going to go to you, brother. What's your general approach when you're talking fantasy? Are you more the aggressive guy? And before I let you answer that, my boy Lance there gave me a little idea. I think he might be writing articles for your site on how to manage those orphans with some of those tips he's giving.
Yeah,
I like it. But listen, man. Everybody's trying to find the right balance, right? It's all about balance. So like you go to our pros versus Joes that we all somehow ended up in the same league together, which is kind of funny. After how that happened. But when I'm drafting maidens, I'm always coming out of there with a couple first round picks. It's just it's hard to win, but it's harder to win without having those picks. I always feel better with having two. I think I got 3 in our pros versus Joe's league, and that's just kind of my philosophy. I'm not looking to win 1 year. I'm looking to win 3 years in a row. And it's hard to do that drafting, chalk. You would have done that this year. How's that working out for you right now? Everybody's IR'd, and, I'm pretty happy sitting there. I probably have as decent roster as anybody else after everything that happened.
Few of those this year in those early rounds.
Yeah, it's tough, but you know what? You don't see a lot of first round picks in the bank get IR'd. It's nice to have them. And if you have a down year, you have a tough year, and things go awry, which they have for many of us in many leagues this year. I like to have those picks in the bank. So that's my preferable way to draft.
It's as close to a sure thing. And Jordan, I know, you can add to this. I think most people who have read your book or follow you on Twitter or have listened to us, on here, listen to your show, have an idea of your general approach. But anything to add, I think you kind of like what Nelson is talking about there with gathering first rounds, and even Lance touched on it when you're buying an orphan.
Yeah, I actually the orphan adoption process for a dynasty team, I think, is probably like the best thing you can do to become a better owner, right? If you're just looking, usually you can get it at a discount, and then you can try a lot of different things and do a lot of team building. It's a great exercise. And and the best part about it is you have no bias, right? Because you're coming in, you haven't picked any of the players or anything like that. You can just straight up play, and it's a really good exercise. I do like the future first round picks is, I think that point that they don't go on IR is exactly right. They don't get hurt. They don't get COVID, right? They don't get, they don't get benched, right? They're liquid assets, and you can use them to pick, right? And I did in the Analytics of Dynasty in 2020. I looked at the value of them, and they're worth more than the market appreciates by, there's a few different measures there. I think at least 10 to 15%, at least that. But when you actually factor in that people think that their picks are usually going to be a lot later in the round than they actually are. On average, JD, in the league that we're in, I use that league as an evaluation, and I just said, what's the odds that you'll win the league? And it was something like the total was like, the average answer was like 22%, and it's 8.3 is the average answer. Actual average answer. People are like 3 times more confident that they're going to win than they actually are. So when you think about that, all those picks tend to actually be cheaper than what their inherent actual value is. And I think people misvalue them. So all of those things together, I think it makes them a really good option to get upside too. And in even a couple years out, I mean, I traded Damian Williams. The entire premise of the trade is I traded Damian Williams for a 2021 first about 18 months ago. That 2021 Damian Williams is not playing right now, and that 2021 first is a virtual lock to be 101 in a start 2 QB league, right? So those things can really, when you take that patience play and those picks, they can really be dynasty changing assets.
So Danny, I believe maybe a week or two ago, you guys did a segment on where to attack people's first round picks. That guy in second, third, fourth place that thinks he's winning this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Thinks he's going to be in the playoffs. Okay. As Jordan's just said, he's probably got an 8% chance to win the league, probably somewhere around 25 to 30% chance to not even make the playoffs, especially evaluating something in week 3, 4, 5, which is way too early to evaluate anything. And that guy's pick, is really gold.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because of the fact that, especially like the FFPC, where there's a toilet bowl for the 101, and often the very worst team in the league doesn't win it. It's one of the teams that just barely missed the playoffs ends up winning that. Right. And if that's the case, then that becomes a very, very valuable pick. But the other nice thing about the FFPC is if you're the worst team in the league, the worst you can pick is 104, right? And
Correct.
That's still a great pick, So even if you're trading to somebody who you think is going to end up being the worst team in the league, you're going to get no worse than the 104 out of it. So it ends up, there, as Jordan was saying, I mean, it's such a great deal trying to grab those first because people just aren't valuing them the way they should.
And I think it's important to mention that I am 4-0 in that league. That it's one of my many 4-0 rosters that Jordan is referring to. Trade Addicts 5. Shout out to Dynasty Outhouse, Russ, our boy Russ out there, running those solid Trade Addict leagues. Guys, I inserted something in the show sheet, which we said we would or would not follow tonight, but which kind of after I sent it out to you guys, but. Just a little something, and I don't know what you guys think about this or if there's anything to add, but I find like a very cheap way that I build value on my rosters is learning how to play your taxi squad, your injured reserve spots, and the waiver wire. Specifically, like when in those first come, first serve leagues. I know that's not a common thing. I'd say like maybe 20 to 25% of my leagues have that option. But even without that option, I find if you pay attention to when players are able to move on and off your injured reserve and your taxi squad, and again, we play in different leagues, right? We're talking about the FFPC, but a lot of us play in those deeper MFL type leagues where you go on the waiver wire and there's not much there. But I think, something like Scott Fishbowl is a perfect example. I picked up Tanyan last week. He was my waiver wire highlight on this show last week, and dude blew up, right? And he's I got him for free in the Fishbowl because I just waited for the waivers to go by, had my little alert on my phone, went in there for free, and then picked up guys that I wanted for no. So I just feel like if you stay on top of those little things, those are the little edges that you can get, against your opponents, especially in those higher competitive leagues where the edges are closer and a little more important if you can find one. You guys have anything to add to that? Or
I agree. Like even in like the baseball leagues we have, the home leagues, we're West Coast, so at midnight, sometimes I'll just stay up till midnight just so I can get that free, grab it right now for free. It's like same stuff.
Yeah, like every little edge, right? And I find like that's one where I've gotten those little players where you get them on your roster for free, and some of them don't hit. You grab like 3 or 4 guys, maybe one of them hits. That's good enough. You've built value there, right? So I'm just saying maybe pay more attention to those little details when you're managing your roster throughout the season.
Yeah, that's funny, Lance. I used to play in a private league on Yahoo, and they ran their waivers at like 3 a.m. or something like that, Central Time. Yeah. There were a couple times, and you can still do $0 bids. So, I had no problem running myself out of money because I knew I could do the $0 bids. And so I'd get on there at, I'd set my alarm at like 3:30 or something like that. And just
that's a problem.
Make a couple pickups, and I do have a problem. I know. I go crawl back in bed again.
Then the guy who created a website about the game inside the game for basically for us degenerates, and I was gonna say when he was talking about it's fine. We're in a good way. We are degenerate. We love this game to that point where Dan is setting alarms at 3 a.m. so that he can, there's other things in his life that are probably more important that he probably wouldn't set the 3 a.m. alarm for. But that I completely understand, my friend. And I'd wake up happy too. You wake me up at 3 a.m. for anything else, I'm bitter. I'm a miserable man.
But that's the problem. He's probably excited to get up then and do that.
Exactly.
I'm most excited when that player that I really want was still there and I could grab him before anybody else. Then I definitely am going to bed a happy man again.
Totally.
It's just it's outstanding.
Totally. So guys, we I mentioned it earlier. This week's kind of main theme is looking at guys that we maybe missed on coming into the season and how we're approaching them. Is there opportunity to buy them now? Are we avoiding them? Should we sell them if we own them? And Lance, I'm going to go to you first. Just you started the conversation earlier, so why don't you give us let's start with the quarterback position, guys. Let's do this by position, just because there's a few of us on. It'll keep some kind of organization or flow to the conversation. Look, if we go in a different direction, it's all good. But let's start at the quarterback position. Lance, who's a guy? And actually, the reason I wanted to go to you first is you came up with the title, brother. No regrets, right? And I love that because I live by those words. I have 0 regrets in my life. So why don't you tell us your quarterback that you have no regrets and what you're doing with them these days?
I have 3 listed, but I ain't gonna say them because that way other people can play. But I don't have any Aaron Rodgers, and I'm just surprised what he's doing with like the talent he has around him. It's like impressive. They must have shored up their O-line or they're just scheming everybody. But he's got pretty much. I mean, that's like Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams, but the rest of the guys, Lazard was looking actually pretty good. But I mean, that's not what you call we didn't know Tanya was so good. So I was just like, how can you do anything with that? So I don't have a single Aaron Rodgers this year, and I regret it. I have a pretty good quarterback game going, in general, but it would have been nice to have a piece of that.
Yeah, that was one I did not see coming either, Lance. I mean, my goodness, everybody was kind of crapping on Aaron Rodgers, and he's not going to be that bad. But, also you're just looking at who's likely to be good, and you're looking at a situation, you're going, there's just, I just didn't see the path to it, really. So
Yeah, and he was dropping pretty late. I mean, he wasn't.
Yeah,
high.
exactly.
Yeah.
you could pick him up for almost free, and in dynasty leagues, I mean, he was going just like
going around 13, 14 real consistently.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And that's just crazy. So how about you, Nelson? What's your pick at quarterback?
Well, I gotta tell you something. I have done an extremely poor job this year of evaluating quarterbacks and where I thought things were headed. So where it's so hard is, you miss on Rodgers there. Actually, I didn't miss on him as much, but I missed and did not evaluate the QB 18 right now, which would be Deshaun Watson.
Oh, yeah.
I did not evaluate that DeAndre Hopkins, Bill O'Brien circus correctly.
Dan, is he pouring salt on the wound here? Is that what's happening?
I don't want to do that, but I mean, I missed. I didn't. I drafted him probably in startups 7th round, 8th round, sometimes 6th round, a couple times. I didn't see it. He was probably QB 3 or 4 off the board, right?
Right, exactly. And what JD is referring to, just to give the listeners an idea, is in our Pros versus Joe's Superflex Dynasty. So we had a first-round pick that we traded back, and then we traded into the second round. And we had, surprisingly, our pick of Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, and Dak Prescott for quarterback at the 202.
Remind me of that too.
And we took Deshaun Watson at the 202, Russell Wilson went at the 203, and then Nelson snagged Dak at the 204. And I'm bitter.
He's looking good.
I mean, how are you going to see that coming? Okay,
no, you're not.
At QB 18 right now.
Right.
That's
it's tough, man. It's tough because you go into the dynasty, you're looking upside, you're seeing Dak and Russ on the back, not back end, but like they're quarterbacks, right? They're like tight ends. Like when is the back end? But you think that at some point the value and the upside that a guy like Watson with his age and that gap between him and those two guys, you're thinking, you can make up what these guys are already producing. And like you said, with Hopkins gone, it's not that like he brought in some weapons, but it's like he spread it around too thin, instead of getting him one really nice target, he got him like these Cobbs and Cooks and whatever else he got him.
JD, I think that with him, that people were focused on the Hopkins situation, okay, and thought it would be okay with the Cooks and the people like that. But I think we all failed to evaluate the coaching situation there. And that was a mess. And that's where he's QB 18.
Yep.
He'll probably be a buy. He'll be a buy next year.
Yeah, I think that's a great analysis. And, if you're a Watson owner, I mean, basically you just got to hope you get, there's a BOB bounce going on now that O'Brien is gone. And hopefully it kind of lights a little bit of a fire under the team.
Jordan, I'm going to go to you. I had quarterback wise, I was on board with Lance. I mean, Rodgers was a guy that it's like anyone who's played long enough should have known, that at the value he was going and where he was going, that he was a buy. But, you kept passing on him or whatever in drafts. What are your thoughts on the two guys we talked about? And is there another quarterback that you maybe missed on that either you're regretting and you're thinking you want to buy now, or that you're just, thinking maybe you missed in the sense that you own them and they're not living up to it?
So I think the thing with Aaron Rodgers is the mistake that I think dynasty players make is, especially a quarterback, and you can do it at different positions and get away with it, but at quarterback, it's a good way to fail a lot, which is to shift off quarterbacks that are in their 30s and aren't the next, biggest, brightest thing. And draft guys like Baker Mayfield ahead of him, right? That's the mistake. And what you'll see is guys like Aaron Rodgers play a long time. And, I mean, let's be honest about what he's been. He's been he was quarterback 7 and quarterback 11 the past 2 years, right? It isn't like he's been bad. The situation wasn't ideal. And I mean, they take Jordan Love, and it's basically it's pissed off Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, is essentially what it is, and that's a dangerous, that's a bad man.
In the ass he needed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine if they did that just for that reason. That's good.
I'll tell you what, though. I mean, have you guys been watching Aaron Rodgers' body language this year compared to last year? I mean, talk about night and day. I mean, he just looks like he's having fun out there. In the last 2 years, he just looked like he was going to the dentist, man. Yeah. I mean, it was just horrible.
Yeah.
You guys see him on McAfee's show?
No.
It's a weekly segment. It's going to be a highlight.
Hilarious. He's like basically saying, like, I laugh when people talk about my down seasons, because down seasons are, career seasons for some guys.
Oh, I did hear that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, and it's funny, like the comparison between him and Carson Wentz. I mean, just look at the greatness that is Aaron Rodgers, right? That situation is not better than Philadelphia's, right? I mean, I would actually argue that Philadelphia's got a better set of weapons right now than Green Bay does, and he's just torching people, and Carson Wentz can't get out of his own way. I had Carson Wentz in the top. I had him in like the top 10 initially in rankings. That's a big miss. I sort of felt obligated to put him there just because he had prior production and felt like in an age range that he felt appropriate there. That was my biggest miss. My favorite analysis piece of the entire offseason has been Dak Prescott. I mean, the fact that when you look at quarterback ones historically, they've been 2+ standard deviations over touchdown rate. So typically about your average touchdown rate would be about 4.5%, right about in that range historically. And so typically what you see is the quarterback one in a seasonal finish north of 7, right? 7, 8, Lamar Jackson was right about 9 last year. And that's how many touchdowns they're throwing per attempt, on their attempts basically, or what percentage of their attempts are touchdowns. It's really tough to get quarterback one and not have a huge touchdown rate. Dak Prescott's he's quarterback one right now. Dak Prescott's touchdown rate, 4.4%. So he's right at average. I mean, so if he ever gets good variance, right? Like it's an enormous upside, right? If things ever break right for him, I mean, he was
50 points a week.
Yeah, he was quarterback. He was quarterback 2 last year, and had again basically an average touchdown rate. So I think there's, as good as he has been, there is a lot more ceiling there that we just haven't got yet. My biggest regret is I didn't have more of him. That's my biggest regret. But I identify he was my quarterback 2 coming into the season. I had him over Lamar Jackson, and I stuck with it. People sort of rolled their eyes at me and thought it was shock talk or whatever. But that was, I think, my just the profile is so good. It's just so good.
Hey, Jordan.
Yeah.
So being from Philly, with Wentz, right? Because we've all overvalued him and over-evaluated him. Here's my take on this guy.
I'm still in denial. Stop.
What's that?
I said I'm still in denial.
I mean, and I'm looking at his helmet sitting right behind me. So I mean, but here's the deal with that guy is that he is streaky. Okay, he was streaky and got hot in 2017. Okay, yeah, he got hurt, but he's been streaky, and I think that in fantasy we get stuck on remembering sometimes the streaks. He got hot the last 4 games. Yes, he got weapons back last 4 games. But you know what? It was against the Giants and the Redskins and the Cowboys the last 4 games, and he got hot and got him into the playoffs. He is an inconsistent quarterback that holds the ball too long, and I have not seen that change in the 4 years he's been in this league. We overvaluate him.
You know what the interesting thing with him is, So I posted this on Twitter, and I didn't realize how venomous that the Philadelphia Eagles Twitter could be, because it was very aggressive.
We don't like people.
I mean, I've heard about Seahawks Twitter, but man, like Eagles Twitter, I stepped in it.
Yeah.
He's consistently in the one excuse that I heard from them. Again, I don't think that Green Bay's offense is better than the Eagles' offense. I mean, without Devontae Adams. With Devontae Adams, yes. But the guys that are there, I mean, there's not – I mean, the only Pro Bowler that either of those two teams have at the receiver or tight end position is on Philadelphia. So, I mean, that thing has always been, you know, he doesn't have any weapons. Rodgers is doing it with equal or worse.
It's not just that though, Jordan. You look at the line in Philadelphia. Okay, they don't have anybody.
Well, see, here's the thing that's what was interesting. So I went back and I looked at it, and right now they're 12th in pass blocking according to PFF. In Carson Wentz's career, going back to 16. So 10th, 9th, 3rd last year, and 12th this year. So this is his worst line, but it's still above average. In terms of yards per attempt, where he ranks in the league, going back 29th, 10th, 12th, 25th, 32nd. It hasn't mattered, right? It has not mattered for him. This line is slightly worse, and if that's the excuse that we're going to make.
Supporting cast the factor there?
What's that?
Supporting cast? Is that the factor there?
I mean, he's had good players, right? Like,
no, right, Nelson?
It's not the supporting cast. He's inconsistent, and he does the cardinal sin of quarterbacking. He holds the ball too long, which creates turnovers, creates inconsistencies, and he doesn't make quick enough decisions. And I've watched it now for 4 years. It has not changed. Here was what happened. Frank Reich was Carson Wentz's guy in the Super Bowl here. Okay. When they lost Frank Reich, it was a big deal. Peterson was not the one guruing Wentz. Okay. It was Frank Reich. Mm-hmm. When they lost him, and they lost the play calling, and they lost all the great love that we had for a run there, it affected him. Then he got hurt. And then if you remember in 2017, he ran with the ball a lot, which made him extremely effective. He became a drop back quarterback. And God, I hate to say this, and I'm going to say it anyway. He reminds me a lot at this point of his career of McNabb. There's a lot of similarities in him. Okay. Very inconsistent, throws the ball in the dirt half the time, makes the spectacular play that nobody else can make. But he's not consistent enough to be a good enough quarterback to win 12 games. You know, he'll win 8 games, 9 games, look fantastic, beat the 49ers like he did the other night. That's great. Do you consider that a great game? I didn't. You know, it was okay. It was just better than his garbage that he threw up the first 3 games.
I'm starting to worry about him because, you know, I think I've seen like at least 2 plays in the last few games, or even one game where he's like selling out to get a first down on a run, and I'm like, holy shit, that's how he got hurt. So he ain't learning that. Yeah, he's doing full blast runs. You know, I'm like, that one hit and he's back on the shelf.
Yep.
I have him in the OG GOAT, Dan, and I'm definitely glad I picked up Herbert in the 3rd round of that 1 QB league. Just, you know, rookie drafts. If you don't have a guy you love, you pick up that second quarterback that's been drafted in the 3rd round. And I've got Breeze and Wentz in that league, but with Herbert behind them, I feel okay. I feel a little safer. But yeah, I mean, I'm a little more nervous about Wentz. I was, you know, what Jordan shed light on with the offensive line is definitely a surprise to me. The fact that it's been top 12 for, you know, and even top, like you mentioned, top 5 there, top 6, right? In some of those seasons. So not like a scapegoat for him or an excuse in any way. Dan, what's your quarterback? A name I'm going to throw on the table is Josh Allen. Is a guy.
That's my guy.
That's why I do it every week, and I had to do it this week. Okay, so there you go, buddy. He's yours. Take it.
All right. So, I mean, can you imagine that, you know, we'd be talking about Josh Allen as quarterback 2 with only 83 rushing yards on the season and 3.3 yards per rushing attempt? I mean, you know, when you're thinking about Josh Allen, you think about this is a guy who's kind of a, you know, a pretty crappy passer who, makes his living on the Konami code of rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. And then this year he's completely flipped the script. I mean, his passing has just been fantastic. I mean, he's at like 8-9 yards per attempt, I believe, this year on his passing. He's at 9.0 yards per attempt on his passing. He's at 3.3 yards per attempt on rushing. And that's completely opposite from what you expect. He's got 12 touchdowns already through 4 games. In 2018, he had that passing touchdowns. In 2018, he had 10 passing touchdowns. In 2019, he had 20 passing touchdowns. I mean, he's just, I never saw this passing revolution coming. I mean, the Bills are running 4 wide receivers a lot of the time. That's just crazy. I mean, I did not expect the offense to morph in the way that it did. So Josh Allen is a guy that I didn't really get enough of this offseason. And, it's kind of one of my biggest regrets. I did get on him kind of late, but, I would have loved to have had a lot more. What do you guys think about Josh Allen?
Yeah, I was thinking this, like when he last year when he made like John Brown, have a good season, John Brown's not very big and he doesn't have big arms. So I'm like, if he's accurate enough to make John Brown, work, then he's got some talent. It was like, at first I wasn't sure if he had that, but after I saw that, I was like, okay, I think he's learning. He's getting better. So I was on him, but I kept getting Kyler.
Right.
And paying, it's expensive to get Kyler. But, I mean, he was like right there, like maybe 1 or 2 right behind Kyler on my list.
So let me ask you, because we mentioned Dak and we mentioned obviously Allen here. Dak last year, obviously schedule was a factor, but did amazing first half of the season, that offense, and then sputtered a bit in the second half. Nelson, you touched a bit, kind of going into the back end of the season towards the end. But with Allen, the nature of Buffalo, I mean, they're throwing the ball now. They've got Diggs. They're like, do you guys see Dallas and Buffalo as maybe sells right now when you're looking at guys like Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Cooper, even whether we're talking about these quarterbacks? Are you guys seeing an opportunity to sell these guys and build value on your roster and still be able to be competitive? Or are you just riding this thing until it takes you to victory?
I think that it's a ride for me personally right now.
Mm-hmm.
I was I'm not right much, but I was right on Allen and drafted a lot of him. I love the value on him and his performance. I thought he was good. I liked it. He passed the eye test for me. I'm not getting off of either one of those offenses right now. Especially if you look at what 80% of the games last 2 weekends went over. Defenses obviously aren't catching up to the offenses right now, and I'm riding them out.
Yeah, speaking of that, is like I used to think like 144 for like FFPC scoring was, if you're going to win most of the time, but not anymore. What happened?
No, you better have 160.
160.
Damn, I got to adjust my
Yeah, and and I think a lot of it too is just kind of because college is kind of pulling the NFL in new directions. With the mobile quarterbacks who the run pass options, are putting a lot more stress on defenses. And the other thing is, these NFL coaches are starting to go for it a lot more often on fourth down, which stresses the defense in an entirely different way. Having to defend that extra down. And they make it often. And when you don't make it, then the other team is in a better field position, right? Instead of a punt where, all of a sudden they're pinned back on their, 10, 15, 20 yard line or whatever. Now you've got a team that's on the, 35, 40, 50, maybe even the opponent's 40, whatever the case may be. And so that's also ratcheting up the offensive scoring. So I think, these are boom times. And, as far as the quarterbacks going, I'm doing the same as Nelson. I'm riding both of those guys because with with Josh Allen, I still kind of wonder, but the Bills defense isn't doing that well either. So it's keeping the pressure on him. So he's got to keep throwing it. And what they're doing offensively, no defense has really been able to come up with answers for it. I mean, you're looking at receivers 1 or 2 times a game they're just running wide ass open, and even Josh can hit a wide ass open wide receiver, right?
Danny, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Because we had a conversation I wanted to ask you tonight. So going back, right? So everybody, and this is for everybody, I guess. I like to ask everybody's philosophy, right? So, everybody's, don't draft a quarterback till late. Don't draft a quarterback. If you look at the difference now between these top quarterbacks and what they're putting up point-wise compared to the Breezes and Wentz, putting up 20 points a game, you're going to lose when you run into these top quarterbacks now. They are difference makers. I don't feel like it used to be this way.
But Nelson,
it's a difference. You lose now.
In French we call it parenthèse. What is it in English? Like those things you put on each side of a word. What is that?
Parentheses?
Parentheses. Okay.
Wow.
For me in the FFPC, the parentheses positions are tight end and quarterback. And I'll give you an example. My 500, not to talk about another one of my 4-0 rosters here, but my Dynasty 500, I won last week with Dak and Kittle posting 45 and 47. Like, they basically won me the week, just those two guys. This is a position, like you said, Nelson, that people think, oh, I'm going to draft later. I'm going to pick up a guy later. No problem. I'll grab Minshew and, whoever, I don't know, Bridgewater, right? But when you can lock up those parentheses positions and everything in the middle lines up really well, nobody can really mess with you, because you're like you said, Nelson, you're not getting 45 points out of every quarterback, right? Quarterbacks are not necessarily winning you a week. Tight end in a tight end premium, there's a higher chance. But if you can get that quarterback that goes above and literally wins you weeks, like these guys have done, that's a difference maker.
Plus,
I think that's an important point, and I saw kind of a couple of tiers where, we saw quarterbacks that were really making a difference. One of them was the Dak, Josh Allen, Russ Wilson, Kyler Murray tier. They were all in the quarterback, like say 3 or 4 through 8 range, something like that. Yeah.
After the Lamar and Mahomes,
right? Who were just impossibly expensive, So it was pretty easy to lay off of them. But then you get into that next tier, and I've got some DAC teams that are, of course, doing incredibly well. And then you could get down into, if you could pick up like Cam Newton, obviously was a great value. Roethlisberger has been pretty decent. Burrow has been great. Minshew hasn't been too bad either, So, but if you're going the budget route, if you could get a couple of those guys, then you were also sitting good. But that tier of kind of the pocket passers, the Breeze, Brady's, so forth like that, those guys just haven't done as well. Wentz, another one in there, Stafford, Goff.
Do you remember a year where it's so influential? If you don't have a good quarterback, you're done right now.
Right.
Every week is the same. There's Josh Allen 38 points last week. Somebody, Wilson 45 the week before. The top quarterbacks, I don't remember a year that are dominating and leading teams to victories like they are right now. I think at the end of this year, you're going to look at that top tier that you're talking about, and it's going to be such a difference between the Bradys and the Breezes. It's going to rethink people's philosophies next year.
Yeah.
I was thinking in my opinion, defense, like year to year, is very rarely, dominant. It's usually like coin toss almost. So after like a month, we can see who has pretty much the worst defenses. And so like trading for Dak, you're pretty comfortable with, them they're going to be in shootouts. And that we didn't know all that. We kind of think some of these defenses like Buffalo's going to be good and their run game's going to be good. But so much changes every year. You got to like watch the first few months, and then you can just go after the ones with the worst defenses because it's just easier.
Right. Yeah, they're going to be forced to throw.
That's definitely the difference maker, right? Because if you do have a good defense, you don't necessarily need to put up that many points. You're not going to be, hustling the ball down the field as often. So that's definitely a huge factor. And you see with Dak, man, like that, it's almost a blessing if you own Dak that defense is not bad,
JD, Buffalo's D is not bad.
No, not really.
True that,
and they're slinging it.
It's for sure. But Allen's got that. He's got two main factors. He's got that serious long ball that's like abnormal, and then he's got the abnormal running factor. On a team that likes to run the ball. So whereas I think like Dak is just like, I need to get ahead of what my defense is allowing at this point, and I got the weapons, so I might as well use them. All right, guys, this has been awesome. Like personally, I hope our listeners are getting a lot out of this, but we do have to quickly insert, we've got our friends over at Viridian Global who are producing some awesome goat gear for us. Will and I have been in the lab. We've been putting together an exclusive piece for you guys. I'm actually, if you're listening right now, I am going to drop a picture if I can get to it. So we've actually have a limited edition, and you've got it on the screen right now, limited edition Goat District jersey or T-shirt. On the front, you've got the goat, and on the back, you've got the hashtag always be trading logo that our boy Mark has created, our boy Minshew over there at Viridian Global. So we've got two colors. This is going to be available for a limited time. So go to viridianglobal.com in the collections section. So viridianglobal.com/collections/goat-district or hyphen district to get all your goat gear. And like I said, these two pieces in two beautiful colors, the charcoal, and I don't know what blue that is, but it's growing on me. I got to say, it's pretty.
Yeah, it's kind of a teal.
I thought it was a teal. I said turquoise.
Turquoise. There
Almost
you go.
Sky. Yeah, something like that. But yeah, check it out. We're dropping it today. It'll be available for a limited time. And Dan, I know you received 3 beauty shirts from the Dynasty Warzone. Shout out to our boy Randy, Jerry out there putting out some great content and some beautiful jerseys. And we've got the True North Fantasy Football as well. And Dan, you splurged, man. You've got 3 of them. That black and red is pretty sweet, man. I've got that one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you can throw me on the screen, I've got them. You've got the Dynasty Warzone. This one I love. This is a fantastic shirt. And then of course we've got the True North.
If only our wives could see us right now. Grown men, T-shirt, and rocking that goat.
I like that one.
He's got the Goat District T-shirt on there. That thing's sweet, man. They're super comfortable. They fit beautifully. Like we said, same with the Dynasty Depot. Nobody's making money off any of this stuff. We're basically just making this stuff available. We have sponsorships so we can make this machine run. And we partner up with awesome partners like the Dynasty Depot and obviously here with Viridian Global. So go check out the merch over there, the goat gear. We're dropping this special edition T-shirt for you guys. I know Scott Fish is someone who commented on this shirt and he was a fan of it. So we're gonna send him a piece so he can rock that thing around. But guys, let's get back into it. We talked about quarterback at length. All right. So we're not going to go through each position because I don't want to keep you guys here. I don't want your wives to start calling me and stuff. Jordan's got a new baby. Jordan, I'm going to go to you first. Let's put the rest of the positions in one pot. What's a player that whether you overshot or you undershot that you missed on, but you're seeing opportunity right now or that you're feeling that, if you own them, maybe you just sit on them until the value grows back.
That's a good one. I think I mean, Mixon's really interesting. I'll go with DJ Moore. DJ Moore's a really interesting profile. I don't think he's anything different than he was last year. I actually think he's better. It's become a narrative that, Robbie Anderson's eating his lunch. He's actually up in air yards. He's up in market share of air yards. He's actually been as productive on a route run basis. The only thing he does not have yet is a touchdown, right? And if you sort of gave him a touchdown, he's right about where he finished last year in terms of points. So I don't think, people are there was a big debate on Twitter about it. He's a player that I think is as a long-term dynasty play. I think he might not have the ceiling of wide receiver 5 or something like that in a year, but is the difference in, we've talked about this in Warp and these sorts of things, wins over replacement player, the difference between wide receiver 12 and wide receiver 24 is not that much different. And I think that's a difference. That's a spot that I think DJ Moore is going to fit pretty comfortably in the next handful of years here. So I have a good confidence that he'll have multiple top 24 finishes. And he's essentially right there, and everything looks good except for the fact that he's had bad touchdown variance. He's up in yards per catches. I mean, he's averaging 16 yards per catch and doesn't have a touchdown yet. So, I mean, those things are going to, I think, work back in his favor. And I'm pretty optimistic about him going forward.
And if you're on board with that, I mean, no better time to buy, right?
Right.
Now, let me ask you guys, let me throw something else on the table before we pass this around. New quarterback with this receiver. For me, that's a huge factor. Some will take, you've got CeeDee Lamb going in there and just fitting in really quickly, or maybe is it going to take a little longer with a guy like Bridgewater? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've got a new quarterback, you've got a new offensive system. I mean, there's a lot of newness going on there. And, the other thing that you can tell yourself is that you've got potentially a high draft pick quarterback coming that way in 2021. So, now might be the very best time to buy DJ Moore.
Anyone else on the Carolina receiver? I know he's a hot topic right now because, guys, he was being taken, second, third round, and he's definitely not produced at that level.
Right. Where I have him, I'm just going to show patience. I'll show patience for a year or two because I just like his talent.
You have to hold, right? You have to hold. Young receivers like this, you're holding more long run. For me, different than a running back. Running back, I'm a little more impatient.
I'm surprised by Robbie. I didn't think he had that durability and toughness, but he's running crossing routes. He's running everything. It's pretty impressive. Yeah. He was one of the guys I missed on in wide receiver, big time. I don't have him anywhere.
Imagine somebody improving after getting away from Adam Gase, huh?
Yeah.
So is Robbie, just to sit really quickly on him, because he was going super late, especially best ball. I was loving him in those late rounds. Now, is this part of the adjustment, do you think, with Robbie? And does that kind of flatten out as we go further in the season and maybe DJ Moore comes in and settles in a little better? Or do you think that Robbie has increased his value to the point where if you own him and you are competing, you do like him as your wide receiver 4, 5, 6-ish?
Robbie is happy right now. Okay. Robbie is playing for his college coach right now. Okay. So I think there's a ton of talent with him coming out of Temple. I think he can play, and I think he's happy right now. He got a decent deal. And he's playing for Rule, and I think he's going to be there, and he's a factor.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, right now Anderson's he's like a fringe wide receiver 1 almost. I mean, it's almost crazy how good he's doing in FFPC scoring. Where is he? Yeah, he's a wide receiver 1 right now. So I think in Dynasty, obviously,
your pussy is very loud tonight.
He's going nuts, man.
I just had to throw that out.
Thank you. But yeah, I think Anderson, if you can sell him, for what his production is, then you've got to explore that, because I think he's probably going to fade down, and I think DJ Moore is going to pick up a little bit of that slack. So I think Anderson's definitely overproducing what his baseline level is right now, which is a great thing, and you can ride it. But if you can sell him right now, I think it's a good time to sell him and turn a little bit of a profit.
We talk about it often on this show. If you can take guys that you get super cheap, almost free, and you can lock up value when they've built it up, what's the best case scenario? Like, is Anderson really going to be wide receiver one, moving forward, especially with the talent that you see in guys like DJ M around him? Another name I'm going to throw in before we move on from Carolina, and he's just because he was one of my tight ends that I totally missed on. It's not even that I missed on. Like, he was bunched in with guys like Jonnu Smith, Darwin, guys that I was grabbing late. There was 3 or 4 of them where I would just keep grabbing the same guys. Ian Thomas is a guy we saw a little life out of him. He scored. He scored a touchdown recently. I believe was it this week or last week? I don't know. You guys can remind me. But it was right. So is Ian Thomas a guy that are you taking advantage of the touchdown and saying, you know what, it doesn't look like he's going to be part of this offense moving forward, and maybe less than you thought? Or is this adjustment period, aka the first 4 weeks in Carolina, an opportunity to buy a tight end in a position where we're starting to see the lay of the land? Anyone?
I'm just kind of waiting to see how their offense plays out. I think I'm the same way with you.
Yeah.
I wasn't really
fading him,
Thomas, so I'm just kind of I'm still where I was, just not really on him. It wouldn't shock me if he did better, but it also wouldn't shock me if he's just not a part of that offense.
Jordan,
it's like when you watch him move, he looks good. It's just no volume.
Right.
Jordan, is this maybe a case where this is the first season where Olsen's not around? He's actually the starter. There's, again, the adjustment with the quarterback. Is that maybe a factor? Maybe we give him more than 4 weeks to set into this role, or do you think you've seen enough?
I mean, in terms of when you look at pedigree, and when I wrote Analytics of Dynasty 2020, I looked at the base rates, and it was basically you just take the person's position, right? He plays tight end. You take his pedigree, and you just know from there, if he hasn't hit yet, you can just look at the sample and it tells you what their hit rate is. He's about a 20% hit rate guy. So 80% of the time, this is the sort of thing that happens on guys like him. I mean, he's not the snap getter right now. I mean, Chris Manhertz had 77% of their tight end snaps in week 4. So, up before that, Ian Thomas was, but it hasn't been. I mean, he's not playing a true tight end 1 workload. So, I mean, and from an efficiency perspective, he's basically doing nothing on his routes. So, this is a pretty clear void for me. And I was pretty much out on him coming into this year because I thought he saw an uptick in value that didn't really match what I thought his odds of hitting were.
Jordan, you took us down the Panthers rabbit hole, but we hit on a bunch of guys that I think are very relevant right now in Dynasty when you're looking at, do I buy, do I sell, do I hold? So I love that conversation. I know I have a few guys left on my list. Nelson, I'll go to you, man. Who's another guy when you're looking at the other positions other than quarterback that we maybe haven't touched on? I know we talked about out in Green Bay. There's a running back out there that I know myself and a lot of people didn't think would still be a top runner this year. He's a guy that I might throw on the table. Who's someone else that you missed on where you see opportunity right now?
I'm actually going to, if I can, flip it the other way of somebody that I've missed on maybe the last 3 years in a row, and I'm done missing on him. I'm done with a 5th round pick on Mr. Ingram, the tight end. I have sinned many a years picking Mr. Ingram here, and sitting right now at tight end 22, I believe, averaging 8 points a game. I can't do it anymore. Yeah, at least that.
Yeah, I own one share in I think it was the OG or one of the GOAT leagues, and I had him, and it's kind of that for me, the Ezekiel Elliott like hot potato feel. Like he's injured, so he's so good, and the ceiling is just insane. But his offense and his injury track record just scares me. So when I have him, it's like a hot potato. I'm like, do I move him now? Like, you know, and I feel like I think a lot of people got caught this year. What do you think, Lance?
On Ingram?
Yeah.
I like Ingram. You know, I'm not sure about Jones. I mean, the quarterback, he's just like he doesn't have the worst talent, but man, he's not looking so good. And I'm not sure if like you put Ingram on the Niners, he might be pretty good, but I don't know about
Lance. You tell me with that guy, as often as he's injured, and then he had a big game last week. He was 5 for 34. They were talking about the big game he had. And you try to equate that with that 6th round pick that I've used quite often in my lifetime.
That's very tough.
I'm just out, man.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
I'll go Ian Thomas in the 18th round. I'd be happier living with that.
The perpetual tease.
Jordan gave me a 20% hit rate on Ian Thomas in the 18th round. I'm going to roll with that instead.
I've got Irv Smith on like every team, and I'm even picking him up when people dropping him. I'm just like, I can't give up on him. I can't. I just want to see him do.
My two tight
give him
ends.
5 targets.
It's Irv and Ian Thomas are the two
Wow.
guys at tight end that I you know, and Dan knows because whenever we were drafting, Irv was like the one guy out of that group of tight ends where every time you're like, wow, he's still there. Like I can't believe he's still there, and you almost felt like, wow, I'm like, you know, you're like, ooh, I've got a secret no one else knows, and then now you're sitting there and you're like, fuck, this thing's like a dead weight. I need to get rid of it. Am I dropping him? Like, what am I doing?
Right. And you know, if you drop him this year, next year he's going to absolutely explode.
Yeah, next year, I drop him this week. He's going to blow up this weekend. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Drop him then. Please drop him.
Be too, I'm a little less worried about next week than I am about next year. He's one of those guys in Dynasty that if you've got the roster spot, you just got to, you got to stash him deep on your roster and just hold him. But
yeah.
All right, so we talked about the parenthesis, guys, right? The quarterbacks at the tight ends. Before we close this segment, and I don't even mind that this segment was the show because initially that was the idea. Let's look at running back first. We love talking running back on the GOAT District. 2 guys, I talked about one earlier. Aaron Jones was the other guy out there in Green Bay, and Keyshawn Vaughn was a guy that I think a lot of people spent maybe a late 1st round, early 2nd round rookie draft, and I'm one of those suckers, always be drafting those rookie running backs. Where Keyshawn Vaughn, especially in the FFPC where you're shallow leagues, it's like, do I keep him? Is he worth keeping right now? He caught a touchdown this past weekend. Brady's, showing him love. What are we thinking with the running back position and specifically with these 2 running backs on pretty hot offenses right now? Dan,
I got Keyshawn Vaughn in a trade, and I dropped him right away, and I kind of like, damn it, I think I done a mistake. But, his stats were pretty weak when he got that nice touchdown catch.
Right. And with Vaughn, I think his value is not really going to come this year. So, again, he's just kind of a stash and hold guy.
I'll say this about Vaughn. I think, Dan, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I think Vaughn is one of those guys where if you can get him thrown in to a deal where you're a rebuild and you're maybe selling a bigger piece for a few pieces, I'm trying to sneak Vaughn in there as much as I can because, like you said, Dan, I think going into next year, even in the off season, before the season hits, I think you're going to increase your value on him and be able to sell at a profit.
Right, exactly. But and the other part of it is if you're going for a title in the FFPC, a little bit of a shallow league, you're going to go with somebody else who's a little bit better. Like I flipped Vaughn plus a 4th or Ryan plus a 2nd, which ended up I think good for me because I got a pick for next year. So I recouped most of my value on Vaughn, and I feel pretty good about that. And then I was able to flip P Ryan for Logan Thomas.
I think they've got plans for him there. I'd be careful about getting rid of him. He's one Jones hamstring away from showing what he's got, and I think they like him now. I have quite a few shares of him, and I'm going to hold tight there.
Were any of you guys on James Robinson before he kind of like right around the week before the season started? Because I was kind of just ignoring him. I was lazy, I guess.
I pretty much grabbed him in every draft that I did this. A couple of the leagues I had to ask the commissioner to add him to our rookie because I grabbed him pretty much anywhere that I could. But I have a rule where I cap like 25% is the most I want to own a player, except for guys named Miles Sanders and Deebo Samuel. Those are the only exceptions to my rule. And even them, like, it's like 30% is my cap. But James Robinson is definitely every year I have a guy that I get for free in multiple leagues. And this year is definitely James Robinson. And it's nice to have him. The problem is that I have him on some rosters that are not competing. And I'm let's talk about that for a second. I'm trying to
What can you get for him?
I'm just trying to get a first rounder for him right now from contenders, and they're sending me back a second. I'm not moving him for a second.
No, I wouldn't either. I mean, I bought him for a first in a FFPC where I'm contending for a title.
I saw that.
Yeah. It's just one of those deals where, I knew that the owner who was selling him was going to sell him to somebody. And if it wasn't going to be me, it was going to be one of my competitors. And I knew he was probably going to go for a first because that's the nature of this league. I mean, we're aggressive and, everybody's playing to win. So, I was like, well, I kind of got the first crack at him. So I'm just going to grab him and hopefully it works out.
I'm curious to know Jordan's thoughts on a guy like James Robinson, because I feel like if you were my Mr. Miyagi, and I was doing the wax on, wax off right now, you'd be telling him, like, a guy like James, you built your value. It's time to move him. Am I right? Like, Jordan, is that your approach on a guy like that, or on a contender, are you riding this thing till the end?
So that's a great question. I actually looked at this in terms of undrafted free agents guys that have come into the league since 2000. So there have been 21 guys that have hit for a top 24 seasonal finish. 10 of them have been one-hit wonders. So 11 of them have hit more than once. So your odds there are actually better than 50-50, which was surprising. 5 of those guys hit twice. And then there's a couple of there's basically 6 outliers that have hit pretty deep. So that's really what you're looking at is but the problem is there's a lot of landmines, right? With a guy like James Robinson at this point, he's got 0.42 wins over replacements. That's very healthy in terms of what you spent on him, which was nothing, right? I mean, that's a pretty massive return. Even if you got nothing else ever from him, right? If he retired tomorrow, it's still a huge return on what you spent. So for me, I mean, it's, again, I wouldn't sell him for a second because he's locked into a job, right? I wonder, everything has to go right for him to keep that job, right? It's kind of like Gardner Minshew, right? Everything has to go right. Otherwise, they're going to address the position. That's injury. That's all that stuff. There's a lot of landmines for him to get. But while he's got the job, you might as well roll with it. And I wouldn't sell it off for anything less than a first. And I think you should be able to get that. And if you can't get that, just pick wise, do it through a player, right? I mean, he's the perfect type of player you take and you put a 2-for-1 package together with him and somebody else and get an upgrade at a different position, right? That's the easiest way, I think, to sell off a guy like James Robinson.
And aim for guys that haven't popped yet, like Akers. Akers is a guy I'm just anywhere I can right now. I'm trying to grab,
Like if you have a random first, how would you rank like 2 random seconds? Is it 60-70% of a random first, or I mean, what is 2 random seconds in your opinion?
In my opinion, I've actually looked at this. The random future first is, so I use a metric called WARP, which is wins over replacement player, and a random future first is worth about 0.9 wins over replacement through the first 3 years of their career. A future second. A random future second, I think, is about a quarter to a third. So
of a first value.
A quarter to a third of a win over replacement. In the next 3 years. So it's worth if it's it's worth basically a third of what a future first would be. Something like that, I think, is the way to think about it. And the interesting part is the future first, when you sort of actually do the math and look at all the players and all that and sort of do the math on it, it's actually worth more than you would expect, right? The middle of the first round is, if in a 12-team league, it's 1.065, right, between 6 and 7. It's actually worth about 105. So when you sort of get that, just by the way the elite guys are at the top, it sort of drags the number higher than people think it is. So you actually have some residual benefit there as well.
Interesting. Okay, there's a million ways we can go, but guys, we've gone way longer than I paid for all of you guys. So we're gonna do a real quick promo to our friends over at the FFPC, and then we'll go around and see what we can close this thing out with. But guys, we talk about it tonight. We talk about it every week. myffpc.com, high stakes fantasy football. Whether you want to play Dynasty, redraft, $500,000, they have 2 tournaments. Dan, we talk about it every week. And what I want to highlight tonight is, you are on the FFPC already. Waiver wires, they got moved. They got moved to Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Love it.
So Saturday night is, make sure you stay up late after the wife goes to bed. The kids are in bed. You've had your 4th beer, whatever it is. And just make sure you put your bids in, guys, because they moved it over from Friday so that they process on Sunday morning.
It's Sunday at 10 a.m., JD.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sunday, 10 a.m. So that's a key change, and I wanted to make sure we highlighted that. But, guys, check out myffpc.com. I say it every week. Email us at godistrict@gmail.com. Tag Dan or I. Dan will pass it on to me. We've got an exclusive link so that you guys get a $35 bonus credit into your account if you haven't signed up to the FFPC yet and you do it through us. So we'll send you that link. And guys, waiver wire. We're going to do a rapid fire around the table here because, like I said, I don't want any of your wives calling me later tonight. So I'm going to brag a bit more. Tanyan out there in Green Bay was my target on the waiver wire for everybody in Fantasyland last week. And him, Kittle, and Dak were definitely a nice combination. Who's someone that you guys are looking at on the waiver wire this week? With everyone here playing on the FFPC and playing in these more competitive leagues, it's definitely very important to get the right guy. So who's someone, Nelson, that you're spending money on right now in your 100+ Dynasty FFPC leagues? Yes, that's right, people. I did not stutter.
Yes. It's an embarrassing, but yes. I'm spending money on Dearness Johnson.
You bastard.
Love it. Listen, his usage last week was alarming if you're a Hunt owner. 13 carries, 95 yards. I don't think they're going to just put Hunt out there for 25, 30 carries a game. I think this guy's getting a lion's share of it. Not a lion's share. He's getting a piece of this action here. And that team's putting up points, moving the ball. That's my waiver wire pickup. I'm going in pretty decent after him in a lot of leagues.
No, yeah, Nelson's taking over Dan's role this week. He's the one guy I've got in detail here. Like you said, 13 for 95. That's a great call, man. 5'11", 200 pounds. And the dude's got a clothing line called Slow Grind. And he's one of those like undrafted dudes. Like for me in running backs, I love these guys. I love these late round undrafted running backs that will do anything to stay on the field. Initially went to New Orleans undrafted, didn't work out there, went to the XFL, the Apollos, played on the best offense and got noticed. And now he ends up in Cleveland with opportunity, right? And that's all you want for a running back. So great call there.
Thank you.
Lance, Mr. Sport betting man himself. What are you hitting out there in the FFPC with your leagues?
I was so busy trying to stress out over this crap. I didn't do any waiver run at all. I just skipped it. And my home leagues are like, I don't want any of those
Well,
guys.
if you're in a league with Lance, you're welcome.
I'm gonna hit it hard on Sunday or Saturday. No, I didn't even do any. I just said, I don't have time. I think I went after Tanyan in a private league, and I went $300 on like AJ Green. Someone dropped him in a dynasty. I'm like, I had money, and I just figured, what I'm going to see him do, a little bit worse. If he does anything better, I'll be like, wow, maybe he's actually getting himself in shape after 1.5 years or whatever. But yeah, I totally blew it on waivers today. I had some set, but really, I took a week off. But now I'll do it tomorrow.
Jordan, anybody waiver wire surfing right now that is enticing?
I saw this one pop up today actually, and it just caught me by attention. And if you're playing in Superflex, Lamar Jackson missed practice today with a knee injury. And that jumped off the page to me. So I went and collected
jersey.
RG3 maybe?
I went and I dropped what I was doing, which was paying attention to my infant, put her down, got on and added Robert Griffin III, where he wasn't there. So that's one. The other one too, I think Dearness Johnson's the key one this week. The other one I think the looking at the follow on from injuries, right? So a lot of times the second guy, Joshua Kelly was probably rostered, but Justin Jackson right now, he's the injury away guy, right? That's I think typically the play, especially if you're playing at some depth where Joshua Kelly's 100% owned, which I would virtually pretty close to assume that, so Dearness Johnson's another one, just a deeper name that has continued to see more snaps than I would have ever expected coming into the season is Jordan Wilkins in Indianapolis. And max out, Jonathan Taylor is seeing a lot of work, but is seeing I'm not going to say it's alarmingly low snap share, but Wilkins is playing a lot more snaps than I think I would have ever predicted. So I think in the event of a Jonathan Taylor injury, I think Jordan Wilkins would slot right in there, and that would be a one injury away name that I'm making sure is rostered across my leagues.
Yeah, as a Colts fan, I love the Wilkins. He looks good too. That's the other thing is the eye test. He definitely passes it with the limited opportunities had. And Dan, I don't know if we're nervous about Taylor, but it's early in the season again.
No, we're not nervous.
Exactly, maybe a high opportunity, but you guys hit on some really good ones. Jordan as well. A guy I'm going to throw on before I give it to Dan, Kyle Allen. I don't know how many podcasts this offseason I went on just as like that deep super flex stash in Dynasty. I always running back and quarterback. I'm looking at who's at the top. If the ice is thin, then like Jordan said perfectly, that third guy is the best value in the backfield because the second guy is usually who's everybody's trying to get. And for me at the quarterback position, as much as Haskins out there in Washington was just not someone I wanted to invest in. So I was looking at the next guy up, and for me it was Allen with his history with the coach and the opportunities out there in Washington, and we're seeing it come early. So again, not going to win you a season, but the deep stash, super flex to fill in that QB2 on a bye week. I think if you can get them cheap right now is definitely a good buy. And for FFPC people, the KC defense is on most waiver wires right now. And if you're preparing for the weeks coming, I think that
not in my leagues, it's not.
Sorry.
Yeah, you have them already.
I bid up probably in 60 some leagues and literally bid up for that defense. If you look at the schedule the rest of the way.
Well, yeah, and that offense puts so much pressure on the opposing offense that it just forces, whoever KC is playing to be pass, and then that means their defense can just pin their ears back and rush, and that's when good things happen for defenses.
I'm pretty sure I bid up $50-$60 in 50 or 60 leagues for that defense. I'm carry that out the rest of the way.
It's not a bad price at all.
I'm just the one thing I'm glad about right now is that I don't have 50 or 60 teams to go through tonight. I gotta put this together.
JD, so I'm going to ask Lance to pop over to my house next Tuesday and help me start working on waivers since he didn't get in this week.
Yeah. Dude,
It's only a 12-hour process, bro. You can help cut it down for me.
I looked at the clock. I was like, I had 4 hours. Like, damn it, I'm gonna skip today.
Well, see, here's the thing. I had all kinds of good intentions tonight. I did do waivers, but I didn't do as many as I'd planned or as deep as I'd planned, because I came home and the wife was like, "Hey, let's go out on the boat. Let's hit a quick sunset cruise before we get on the pod." And so I went out on the boat with her, and then I came back and it's like, okay, I got an hour to do waivers for how many leagues? Okay, well. I'm not going as deep as I normally do, but just to echo on a couple of things that others have said. I'm definitely with Lance on the RG3 train there, and Jordan. If you're in a super flex league with me and it's got any kind of depth to it at all, you're not getting RG3 because I already own him. He's like my perma stash. That offense and that talent, I'm all over just, throwing him in as my last player.
How about Alex Smith? Is he owned in those super flex or not at all?
Some of them he is and some of them he isn't. That's a great stash.
How about Hurts? Jalen Hurts, is he?
Yeah, I think he's mostly rostered.
Just wondering.
Yeah. And then, Justin Jackson, that was, I thought, another good one because, what I like about Justin Jackson is he's a guy who probably is a little bit more of an Eckler clone, and kind of fits into that role because Josh Kelly might just keep the same role that he's had. Everybody assumes, Josh Kelly's going to be the big, winner because Eckler went down, but it could be Justin Jackson that ends up being that big winner. He does have that year under his belt. Josh Kelly just kind of fits a different role. He's kind of that more the big back, the grinder, the banger, and Justin Jackson, he's a guy who has a little bit more of that do it all skill set like Eckler did. So I could see that thing going any number of different ways, but I think there's a better than even chance that Justin Jackson ends up being probably the better player out of the two while Eckler is out.
For sure, guys. Opportunities out there, like we said, at running back and quarterback, man. You got to kind of look through that thin layer and see who's number 3 on the list because that's usually where the value is. Guys, let's go around the horn here and close this thing out. Nelson, I'll go to you first. Again, very excited about the partnership, excited about the site. Remind the people about all the goodness, where they can find it, the crucial dates, and the goodness that they get if they sign up early, and anything else you want to share. And we thank you very much for spending the night with us tonight. Over 90 minutes, man. We definitely appreciate that. Hey, man, and we apologize to you and your family.
Thank you. I want to thank you guys for letting us in and talking with us, and we're going to do some stuff together. And I think it's the right kind of relationship. So Dynasty Depot, our signups, our website's going live November 1st for our memberships, where there'll be a 40% off of memberships. Remember, you'll be able to get that texting right to your phone notifications. So just go to dynastydepot.com. And as a new company, we are desperately trying to gain followers so we can share our love out on Twitter land at the Dynasty Depot.
There you have it. That's the Dynasty Depot. Nelson, just a pleasure to work with you, brother, and an awesome idea. Like you said, the game within the game, and us degenerates want nothing more than that. So we appreciate that, and we're excited about the ride. Lance, brother, it's fun playing with you in the league. Again, man, it's almost intimidating with the setup you've got there, the professionalism.
Shit.
So we appreciate you, the RG3 jersey, and just remind people where you're at and any goodness you want to share before we close it out.
I have a little website. I haven't written in it a long time, but it's signalfocus.com. and my son writes a little bit of video game breakdowns and stuff. I've been very I haven't written at all in a long time, but I'm kind of getting the urge to do so again. So hopefully things get back to a little bit more like normal. But yeah,
if nothing else, we broke your podcasting cherry here.
Yeah,
so.
I was stressed out all day. this is very casual and comfortable.
Scale
No.
of 1 to 10, how
Mostly it's just like I'm watching you guys do it live, and then every once in a while I get to talk. it's very, very calm and very better than I thought by a mile.
No, it is great having you, man. We appreciate the insight.
Thanks,
we appreciate your time. Jordan, buddy, it was a pleasant surprise. It's always a blast having you on. Like I said, man, the door is always open. And remind the people where you're at. Remind those who have not read it yet where they can find your awesome book. Anyone into fantasy, especially Dynasty, should have that copy in their database or shelves if that still exists. And anything else you can share, buddy.
Yeah, you can go over you can find me on Twitter at McNamara Dynasty. You can find all of the Analytics of Dynasty content. So you can find the book, the 2020 edition. And if you're newer to Dynasty, pick up the original one, the 2019 edition. They're on sale, analyticsofdynasty.com/shop, $30 for the 2020 edition. And it has all your super flex stuff. And one thing that was interesting about our quarterback conversation, there's a lot of landmines to avoid. And I think that in terms of making quarterback drafting more efficient is really a thing to look at. So I detailed a lot of that in the book, so you can go check that out. And you can, if you're looking for more podcast content for me, you can find me at patreon.com/analyticsofdynasty.
Awesome. Dan, I don't know if I feel bad that we're cutting this off because it's been so good, or if I feel bad that it's been this long, but another awesome show this week. I like to think, remind where they can find the Overhyped Sleeper, no E on the end, and anything else you want to tell them before we close it out and tell them good night or good morning in some places.
Well, I'll tell you, I have no regrets about this show whatsoever. As the show was titled, I think it was very apt. We had a great group on tonight, and really enjoyed talking with all these guys. I mean, just wow, fantastic. And I gotta say, the Dynasty Depot idea, it's fantastic. I mean, Nelson can probably tell you, I think I was probably one of the first people to sign up as soon as it was open, to put myself down for an early bird, because I mean, all I needed was the skeleton of the idea. And I was like, yes, this is exactly what we need to have here. So I just love it. I think it's going to blow up, and I'm happy to be in on the ground floor. And, as far as Jordan's books go, I mean, they're just fantastic. I've said it over and over and over again on this podcast. I think, whether you're just getting started in Dynasty, you're fairly knowledgeable, or you think you're an expert, you're going to learn something from Jordan. So get out there and get those books. They are going to be worthwhile for you. And having Lance on was just fantastic. I mean, I just enjoy seeing Lance every year in Vegas, and being in a league with Lance is always a good time. And having him on the podcast is even better. So what a fantastic group of people. You can find me at Overhyped Sleeper. Drop the final E from Sleeper, and I'll get out there. I'll talk whatever kind of fantasy you want to talk on Twitter. I'll definitely throw out a few one-liners, whatever it may be. But let's have some fun out there. Fantasy football should be fun, and if you're not having fun with it, you need to find out why and get back to your roots.
100%, man. No room for bitterness or negativeness. This is all about fun, and no better way than what Dan, the Overhyped Sleeper at Overhyped Sleeper, no in the AN hashtag, always be trading. Make sure you tag Dan and myself at Goat District on your trades or any questions you have about Dynasty. Like we said, man, we got a special limited edition Goat Gear t-shirt dropping tonight. Go to ViridianGlobal.com to find all the Goat Gear goodness. We want to thank all our guests tonight for dropping, again, overuse of the word goodness, but I can't help it. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. We appreciate your company. Be safe, be happy. May all your week 5 lineups bring you W's, and we'll check you all later.
You can't handle the truth.
I'm really rich.
Go district, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offers the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy.
All right, boys.